Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of our Across the Cloud series, which is where we open the floor to you Cloud CoC members to share a bit about their experience in joining the code's ecosystem and going through its adherence process. My name is Gabriela Mercuri. I'm Managing Director of Scope Europe. And for those who aren't familiar, Scope Europe acts as the accredited monitoring body as well as the Secretariat of the EU Cloud CoC. And today I'm thrilled to welcome Chief Privacy Officer of Strada, Sascha Schneider. Thank you so much for being here today and really looking forward to this conversation. Now, if you don't mind, I would like to already segue to my first question and hear your insights on what was the motivation to join the code in the first place. I mean, you guys became members and declared adherence to the code even before the approval, which happened in 2021. So can you give us a little bit share a bit of your experience? What was your motivation? What was special about this specific project?
Right, Gabriela, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you, to have this interview. And yes, actually there's a little side story to the adherence process. We got certified adhere to the EU Cloud Code of Conduct due to a customer requirement. So zooming out a little bit, Strada is a professional HR service provider, and we service around 1,400 customers. We're present in 33 countries. We provide globally services. We process the data of around 11 million people, of our customers in the various industries. So the compliance focus on us is very stringent. So what does that mean? Why am I focusing on that? Because we as a company, we obviously already do comply with certain regulations. We do adhere to other certifications. We do have SOC reports, etc. All of that, right? So when this customer came, a Belgian customer actually, they presented us with the EU Cloud Code of Conduct, and it was, frankly, it was unfamiliar to us. So it landed on my desk, and they said, well, the client is not going to sign unless we're going to adhere to that. And usually what we do is we go out with our playbook and say, well, that's nice that you have that requirement, but here's all of that, right? We comply with all of this. Looking a bit more into the EU Cloud Code of Conduct, it became quite clear that this is different from what we had. It's different because it created a map clearly against the GDPR. So it provided you with assurance that if you adhere to that code of conduct, you comply with the GDPR. So you could say, you could go to the market and to the client who requested it, that not only do we say in our contract, yes, we do comply with the GDPR, but there is a document that signs off on saying, yes, actually, you do comply with GDPR. So that was obviously one initiative for us and one pusher that we said, you know what, let's do that. Put that on top of our compliance framework, which already was solid, but it just solidified it a little bit more.
All right, no, thank you so much. And this is super helpful to understand. I mean, understanding this background is super helpful. Of course, when we look at the cloud industry, we talk about this is a tailored tool, but the cloud industry is quite diverse, right? Mm-hmm. Quite asymmetric. And in this regard, also would like to hear a little bit about the adherence process itself. Like you talk about the mapping, right? I think the code serves as a specific guideline for cloud providers to implement GDPR on their day-to-day. And as you said, it's a legal proof of compliance, right? A legal proof of compliance that received the seal of the EDPB, which is crucial. So all data protection authorities in the EU have said these technical and organizational measures are appropriate for the processing activities of cloud service providers, is the kind of legal certainty that we are all striving for, right? So against this background, for those who aren't familiar with how the adherence process looks like, can you give us some insights on your experience on adhering to the code all these years now?
Mm-hmm. So you would think that after 5 years, it would be a streamlined process, but the good thing is that it continues to challenge you. So it's not something that is just a checkbox exercise that you say, oh, well, you have the controls, you have the requirements, and as mentioned before, it's a clear outline, right? You really know what you need to do, but it's very beneficial to have you as the third party, the independent third party, to look at that, what we provide you. And based on what I said before, we already had a solid compliance framework. There's still room for improvement constantly. When we go to you, we talk to you, we provide you with the evidence, but still you see that there's a blind spot which you, with that independence, really identify and say, oh, yes, did you think about that? Did you think about that policy? Did you think that the process doesn't work in the way that the control requires? And if the control doesn't requires it, then the GDPR requires it. So it's great to be in constant contact and to have that yearly review with you to really identify, okay, this mapping might be something that you need to improve. That mapping is perfect. And also what I do like with EU Cloud Code of Conduct, it's not a vacuum. So what the code does, it recognizes the existing compliance space, may it be the Cloud Security Alliance, may it be ISO, may it be other regulatory requirements, and it factors that in. So when you go and say, well, I already have ISO 27001, for example, it takes off a couple of those controls already. So I really like that because it's not only scalable from a product perspective, but it's also scalable from a regulatory perspective. So that's really great.
Thank you, Sascha. And indeed, I mean, you touched upon several important points. I don't even know where to go now. I would like to explore many of those. We don't have that much time. But in any case, I think, first of all, the mapping exercise, right? For example, when you talk about security standards, IT security standards, the idea was always not to reinvent the wheel and to make sure that providers could leverage their existing efforts. Yeah. So it's also, the code is a living document, and that's why it's about an ongoing due diligence, ongoing compliance, rather than just a one-time check. So the renewals every year, all of that guarantees that you continue to implement appropriate policies, and things shift over time, of course, and that was always the intention. And it's, for us, it's of course great to hear that this also is. You can experience that on your day-to-day, on your efforts, and it really helps you properly implementing the processes and policies. And with that being said, talking about your day-to-day obligations, you are, of course, Chief Privacy Officer. This is a key function. How do you see, what is the added value of the code looking specifically at your role as Chief Privacy Officer?
It's a good question. I mean, Chief Privacy Officer, it's a fancy title, but it really has evolved over the years, right? I'm now also in marketing. I'm also now in sales. I'm in engineering. I'm everywhere in the company. So I have to put on my marketing hat, my sales hat. I need to speak to those people, but we're always with the privacy focus in the back, right? Now, having a guided mapping document like the EU Cloud Code of Conduct helps me just talking to my colleagues in those various areas to explain to them, this is what the law requires, right? This is, if we do that, then we comply with the law, because what happens many times is if you talk to someone in sales, marketing, they don't do legal. They don't do legalese. They look at the law and say, I don't know what to do. And I say, tell me what to do. And without the code of conduct, you just interpret what the regulator would want you to do, but the code really tells you what to do. So that really assists with, in my role, going not only operationally implementing, but strategically explaining to my different counterparts, to my colleagues, well, this is how we holistically as a company can meet GDPR compliance, right? Because obviously it's in their interest as well to meet customer requirements, to have talking points, right? Going to the market and saying, hey, by the way, did you know that Strada is GDPR compliant? But we have a seal of approval, right? So, and that is really only possible with the Cloud Code of Conduct.
Thank you. And I think we always think about two dimensions, which are when you answer to the monitoring body, to the requests of the monitoring body, and you're going through the adherence process, you need to reply to all of these questions, very concrete questions on how do you comply with this and that requirement. And of course, there are the two usual suspects. We say this exercise of answering those questions really help the companies to answer customers and also data protection authorities that whenever they have a requirement there, a request, but also internally. And that's a very interesting dimension to explore because, as you said, privacy professionals, they need, especially as a chief privacy officer, they need to speak to many different departments and so forth. And the fact that this exercise also helps because as you were putting on a very clear, on a very clear form, and you need to answer what do I need to do to comply, that also helps these conversations internally, which is an important dimension as well to highlight. So now talking, I think staying in the realm of complexity, I would say, is not an easier question. We just spoke about the complexity of dealing with different departments, different areas, and raising awareness around privacy, which is a quite burdensome exercise. But next to that, looking at the amount of regulatory obligations for cloud growing, right? Growing and a lot of complexity there in terms of the regulations themselves, also in terms of just the technology, which is a complex technology. How are you navigating, looking at AI, looking at the Data Act, looking at all of those regulatory developments coming your way?
Right. Yes, talking about complexity, right? No, definitely. I mean, it's one of those hats, the classical hat of the chief privacy officer is the compliance hat, right? So one of the key areas that I think, if not 100% of the companies, 99% of the companies, they look at AI. They look at AI and say, okay, this is just an area we have to invest. But then obviously you have my role, the compliance role, to say, okay, yes, we have to invest, but we have to do it right. Right? So there we have the European AI Act. And again, as with the GDPR, there's room for improvement and there's room for interpretation, a lot of interpretation. So what do we do? What we did at Strada, and I think that's going to be representative across the board, we're going to invest into forming a group of professionals across the business. So it's not only a compliance-driven activity, because that would probably stifle innovation. And you cannot talk to the business saying, well, we're going to regulate and we're not going to innovate, because you're going to get fired. But what we're going to do, what we're currently investing in, we're going to invest in people from sales, from products, from security, really have that overview, that 10,000-foot overview of where the business wants to go, but always with the compliance focus, saying, okay, now you, be a chief privacy officer, what does the law say, right? And again, probably, hopefully, there will be evolving codes of conduct where you can adhere to that will provide, as with GDPR, a mapping as to what can be done and what should be done in accordance with the regulation. So whereas we interpret the EU AI Act, I'm always looking out, now that I'm familiar and compliant with the EU Cloud Code of Conduct, okay, what is the next step in that area where you can really say and go to your management saying, okay, we're doing this with the EU Cloud Code of Conduct, that provides that area of comfort and trust. Now for AI, which is probably even faster evolving than classic data processing, right? A couple of years ago it was big tech, big data, then it was the cloud, but AI is just another level, right? So the importance really is to have the focus on compliance, to really make sure that processing that amount of data with the fundamentals of the controls that we already have with the EU Cloud Conduct, the GDPR, that going forward, if there is another code that we can adhere to, that we should be adhering to.
Thank you, and indeed, it's again about not reinventing the wheel, but
Yes.
looking at those practical solutions like the EU Cloud CoC that are working, that you have several providers implementing on the day-to-day, and those new regulations that very often incorporate core regulatory mechanisms such as codes of conduct or certifications, looking like what have we done right? Let's try to replicate as much as possible, take the lessons learned,
Exactly.
and make sure that we facilitate and reduce a little bit of this
Yes.
complexity. No, thank you so much, Sascha. It has been an absolute pleasure. And to our audience, also thank you for watching this episode. Really looking forward to the next one. And if you want to learn more about the EU Cloud Code of Conduct, please do not hesitate to reach out to us at Scope Europe. I see you next time.